We are joined here at this table by Rob Cohen, who is the CEO of IMA Financial Group, and you're chairing the committee which is exploring a Denver Winter Olympics bid. Since you first floated the idea, what has surprised you about the public feedback?
Well, really nothing has surprised me about the public feedback. I think we were quite aware of the concerns that people would have, the history that the Olympic Games has, and so what we're trying to do, though, is to make sure that the public has a voice and that we can hear their concerns so that at the end of the day we can incorporate it into our report.
So you feel like it is your mission to accurately reflect back the will of the public, whether that be positive or negative?
Yes, as I've said from day one, I think we really have two questions to answer. The first is, can we host the games? And that's around, do we have the venues? Can we make the financial model work? Can we meet the guarantees that the IOC puts out? But also, should we host the games? And the should we host the games part is, what is the community's concerns? What does the community like? Can we benefit the community in a way around legacy, around things that people think should be solved, whether that's affordable housing or transportation or whatever the issue is. So a big part of what we're trying to do is reflect what the public feels.
When you say, could we make the financial model work? What's your assessment based on what you know? Could a Denver Olympics be the first Olympics studied since 1960 to not go over budget?
Well, it depends on how you look at the budgets for Olympic Games. So if you look at actually the operating budgets of the Games, many of them have created a surplus. What happens is many cities, the way the Games have traditionally been done, is cities have confused infrastructure projects with the operations of the Games.
Well, that's how they sell it to the public, because they tie in the infrastructure that people want.
Well, sometimes. And so like in Korea right now, if you look at the total numbers, part of it includes a $4 to $5 billion bullet train from Seoul out to where the Games were. And so one of our arguments is they should only build that train if that's something they need before or after the Olympic Games. They shouldn't build it just for the Olympic Games. And so should those things be in the budget of the Games?
Do you need those bells and whistles, though, in order to convince Coloradans to support a Games? So
one of the things that I think is a benefit of the Colorado bid, if you look at the history of bidding cities, those that have done well are those that have many of the venues already in place, so they don't need to take the risk of building new venues. In our case, we have all of them except for a few where we have to build temporary venues. And they've already begun to invest in the infrastructure that you would need for a Games. So, for instance, could we use the Games as a catalyst to help with the I-70 issue? Absolutely. Do we have to do it for the Games? Probably not. It's a 17-day event that incorporates 2.5 weekends. We could figure out how to make I-70 work, but I personally believe, living here, that we need to make I-70 better for our everyday life.
So often those infrastructure improvements are sold as the lasting legacy that benefits the community after the Games. I think it's easy to understand how a Denver Winter Olympics would benefit, for lack of a better term, Denver's elites, the people who make a lot of money off of development or construction or finance. What would be the lasting benefit for everyday Coloradans?
Yeah, well, what we're hoping is that the Olympic ideas and values that are part of the Olympic Games sometimes get lost. So if you go back and you look at the Olympic movement, they talk about things about men and women equal rights. They talk about anti-discrimination, whether religion or sexual orientation. They talk about laying down arms, which we just saw North Korea and South Korea coming together. And so those values are aligned, and I think showing those to the world is maybe more timely than ever. But we also think if there's legacy things that the Games could create around affordable housing, around transportation, et cetera, that the Games are a catalyst for that would be a great legacy for our community and our city long term.
When you guys put out a survey asking for public feedback, you later had to double back and say, well, some of these questions are leading and they're misleading, and it made it seem like people were more supportive than they were. Do you understand how that contributes to a public perception that this bid is happening no matter what common people think, that the elites have decided we are doing this, your ideas be damned?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. And what I want people to know is we didn't write the survey. We went to an independent third party. We specifically asked them to help us write the survey in a way. The first page was positive comments. Many people signed off after the first page, but the second page was all negative comments. And the third page was all open forum for you to be able to write in what you did. So those people actually went through, and we have almost 8,000 people who did. Hopefully we're getting a good perspective of what they do. But yeah, we understand the perceptions. We're trying to do the right thing, and that's all we can do every day is try to do the right thing.
It sounds to me like a lot of this was expected. You didn't go into this thinking that it was just going to be, you know, sunshine and unicorns. I mean, you knew that there was going to be pushback and there was going to be criticism.
Well, I mean, you have Colorado certainly has their history. That isn't going to go away, and so we have the history, and we know what we've heard in other cities. There's nothing that we've heard from the opposition or other people out there that surprises us. What we want to do is understand the magnitude of that, how it ranks in the total things, and how we can come up with solutions to deal with them.
So about some of those other cities, you have got cities around the world that are fleeing Olympic bids. Boston abandoned theirs. You got 4 cities in Europe that walked away from the 2022 Winter Games. So now those are going to be in Beijing, where it doesn't even snow on the mountain where they're going to ski. I mean, it seems to me like the IOC is desperate for cities. Cities are running for their lives. Why should Denver be going against the stream?
Okay, that's an awesome question, because what the IOC recognizes the problems they have, and so they created Agenda 2020, where they could they're looking to say, how can we reduce the cost of bids? How can we reduce the cost for cities that put on the games? They've followed that up now a couple weeks ago with what's called the new norm, which is 118 initiatives, which they say is going to cut another $500 million out of the cost of the games. What we're doing as an exploratory committee is going through all that and trying to verify those numbers to see what's real and what's not real. So is it cash or is it value in kind? If it's value in kind, is it actually budget relieving or not budget relieving, and how these all new norms fit in? And so the question is, have things changed inside the IOC? The fact that we have the infrastructure in place, could we be a city that at the right time with where the IOC is could come in, negotiate a different deal, and do the games in a different way that creates a different legacy?
Would any of those reforms lift the traditional requirement that the host city sign a contract to have taxpayers on the hook for cost overruns?
Yes.
That would go away.
Well, I don't know about go away, because I don't know if the IOC will accept it, but what we're looking at is saying, can we use other financial vehicles, specifically heavily influenced by insurance? You can now insure against cost overruns. You can insure...
Who would insure the Olympics against cost overruns?
Oh,
there are cost overruns in every Olympics since 1960.
Yeah, there are people who would do that, and they're going to charge a premium, which will obviously increase the budget.
Yeah.
But you can also insure things like loss of appeal. So if you have a September 11th event like you had before Salt Lake, and your ticket revenues go down based on what you've budgeted, you can protect the community against that. And so we're looking at those vehicles to see if that's something that we could do that would allow us to do a different kind of guarantee than's been traditionally done.
Last topic. Former Governor Dick Lamm was on this program earlier this week talking about Colorado voters rejecting the Olympics in 1972 for the 76 games. He would like a non-binding referendum on the ballot this year. What do you think of that idea?
Well, what I've said to Dick, before we get to that point, first of all, we haven't even made our recommendation yet. And so what we'd really like to do is sit down with Dick and others and anybody else in our community who has concerns. Let's hear the concerns. Let's see what we can incorporate into the plan. Let's write the plan, and then let's have that discussion about how people feel about the plan that's out. I think it's a little premature at this point to be talking about having debates and be talking about whether you're for or against when you don't even know what you're for or against, because you don't even know what the proposal is yet.
Yeah, I think probably the opponents would say they would like to do something before the steamroller is on top of them. So I guess the question is, philosophically, if you want to gauge the response of the public, are you philosophically opposed to the idea of Coloradans voting on it?
I'm personally not opposed to Coloradans voting on it. My job as the chair of the exploratory committee is to give a report based on, can we do the games and should we do the games? And then it'll be up to the community to decide whether they want to vote and how they want to move it forward.
Gotcha. Your deadline again is end of this month, March 31st, is that correct?
No, the deadline is now the end of April, beginning of May, because of the shift from 2026 to 2030. We have a little more time to do our work and to hear more from the community.
And when does the public get to see your findings?
So after we're done with our report, obviously we will share it with the mayor and the governor, and then as soon as they've had a chance to look at it, it'd be our intention to share it with the public.
All right, Rep. Cohen, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.